Hey class, if you're getting this as a suggested video, recommended video, then it means you missed a question on the quiz regarding calculating the sample size needed. But there are two questions on the quiz that involve calculating the sample size. One is a sample size for means, and the other one is a sample size for proportions, although that question won't even mention the word proportion. So here's what you need to look out for. The question will say, estimate the minimum sample size, or something to that effect. In fact, I think both of them will start out by saying, estimate the minimum sample size. So that's the wording you need to look out for. And if it says, estimate the minimum sample size, you know it's a sample size question. Now, the one for means will actually say that you want to estimate the minimum sample size to estimate the population mean. So you will definitely see that keyword mean on the sample size question for means. And this formula that you see over here to the left, which is n equals parentheses 2s, which is the standard deviation, over e, which is the margin of error, squared, is what you would use if you're going to do it by hand. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through this one first. Then after that, the second possible sample size question won't even say the word proportion. It will just say something to the effect of estimate the minimum sample size needed to achieve a certain margin of error for a 95% confidence interval. That's all it will say. It won't say keyword mean or proportion. It will just say estimate the minimum sample size needed. And when you get to that one, you are going to want to, let me scroll down here, you are going to want to use this sample size formula. So if it doesn't say the word mean or proportion, but it starts out by saying estimate the minimum sample size, and all it will give you is the E, then you would want to use this other formula right here, n equals 1 over e squared. And for both of these sample size formulas, you need your final answer to be rounded up to the nearest whole number. Now, I will show you how to do these by hand, but my suggestion is going to be to use the Excel worksheets that I provided. And I will also show you those in this video. So let's suppose I'm going to do this one up top for means, right here. On that particular one, they will give you a desired margin of error. Well, you need to realize the desired margin of error is going to be the E value. So let's just suppose they say your desired margin of error is 0.32. And then it will give you a population standard deviation that is assumed to be reasonable. Well, that value you'll need to realize is going to be the S. So let's suppose for that they gave me something like 2.8. If I were going to do this by hand, then we would do open parentheses 2, and you can either use 2 or 1.96. Either one should be counted correct in MSL. So I'm going to do 2 times the standard deviation, which I'm giving you as 2.8. That's just my hypothetical example. But divide it by the margin of error, then close the parentheses, and then raise it to the second power. So depending on, if you've got a calculator button like this, or if you're using like Google, you'll use the caret button. It just depends on what power button you've got to use. If I were putting this in Google, this is how I would type it in. So open parentheses, 2 times the standard deviation, which is 2 times 2.8, divided by 0.32, and then close parentheses and square it. So I get 306.25, but I'm supposed to round up on any sample size questions. So I would get 307 for that. Okay. Now, I am going to show you, that's showing you how to do this by hand. I am now going to pull up the Unit 9 Excel worksheet that was provided for you. The reason I'm pulling up Unit 9 is because the Unit 9 one is for means. And this one, remember I told you was, you could tell in the wording that this sample size question was about means. So if you use the worksheet, you will put in, you won't put in sample size in the green box because we don't know that. We're trying to actually solve for that. We won't put in the sample mean because they didn't give us that, nor do we need that. But we will have to type in the standard deviation, which was 2.8. And then margin of error is desired as 0.32 or 0.32. You put that in. And then I'm going to press enter. And notice there's my answer at the bottom in the orange box. How many in the sample? I would need 307. That agrees with what we got by hand. That's how quick and easy it would be if you use the worksheet. Okay, but totally your choice. I showed it both ways. All right, let's look at the second sample size question, which was the one that I said would not give you any keywords, mean, or proportion, and all it would give you is the E. Well, let's suppose hypothetically they tell you that they want you to achieve a margin of error of, say, and that's going to be our E, of, say, 0.235. I'm just making that up hypothetically. Then if you were going to use the Google search bar for this, then you'd have to know to put this entire denominator in its own set of parentheses because only the denominator should be squared down there, only the E. So if I use Google, I would type this in as 1 divided by, open parentheses, 0.235, but go ahead and square that before you close off the parentheses. All right, so I'm going to put this in my calculator. This is the way you would also type it into Google. 1 divided by, open parentheses, that's really important, 0.235 squared before I close off my parentheses. I'm getting 18.1 something, but once again, with sample size calculations, you always round up. So that would mean that I would want to put 19 for my answer. If you use the worksheet, you'll have to go to the Unit 10 Excel worksheet. So let me pull that one up. And for this, you only go put in margin of error that was given. So don't fill in anything else in the green boxes. That margin of error was 0.235. So I'm going to put in 0.235. I'm going to press enter or equals. And there is my 19. It already rounded it up for me. That was the answer we also got by hand. So both of these are sample size questions. It's just that they use different formulas, and so therefore you've got to read carefully to see whether the question mentions that you want to estimate a mean, so that you use the top formula that we did, or if it doesn't even mention the word mean or proportion, it just says you want to estimate the minimum sample size, and then you would use this formula down here. Either way, you can either do them by hand or use the calculator worksheet, the Excel worksheets. But if you use the worksheets, remember the top problem uses the Unit 9 one, and the bottom example used the Unit 10 worksheet. Even though they both look similar, they are different worksheets.